Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 273. Um, I am your host, Michael. For those who are watching this live, you may be wondering where are episodes 272. Um, Tardy on my end. My apologies for that. I will have those episodes up before Thanksgiving. This is a Thanksgiving week episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Again, I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week is Jacob from Jacob Boxing. Gail from Communities Digital News. She should be joining us shortly. What's going on, Jacob?
How's it going, Mike?
A lot of boxing this weekend. Um, Covering it and writing it for the homies at Three Kings Boxing. A bunch of bouts we got to talk about. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, as well as podcast discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. Um, if you want to check out all things regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, P4P Boxing Report. .wordpress.com. That is the link. Check the top right of the blog page. You will find links to where to find us on all over social media. Where to find us on all platforms that carry RSS feeds. Um, where to find the links to the donate button. We do have a Cash Me and PayPal donation links. Most things are not free, including the production of this podcast. So, uh, if you got some spare change this holiday season, $1, $2, $5, $10, or if you want to donate more, please do. Will really help the overall production of this podcast, and including hopefully finding a new streaming outlet because big couple little problems here and there with StreamYards. I'm trying to improve that. Let's get things. Also, last but certainly not least, got the links to my online fitness coaching page. I am an online coach for Beachbody.com. If you're interested in any fitness challenges, if you're interested in anything associated with Beachbody, any of the programs like P90X, P90X2, Lift 4, the new program, 6 weeks of the work that has been highly talked about, as well as the products like Shakeology, uh, Beachbody Recovery, and everything in between, just hit me up. Hit up the link to my coaching page, or just hit me up on Twitter, Brother JR76. Let's get things started. Like I said, busy weekend of boxing. Let's go to the heavyweight division first and foremost. Deontay Wilder Luis Ortiz took place over the weekend, Jacob, in Vegas. First time, exciting bout. Wilder got hurt before, if you want to call it, rallying to stop Ortiz in the 10th. Second round, not as exciting. Wilder was ultra patient. Ortiz boxed. I felt uh, build an early lead, but they called Deontay Wilder Bomb Squad for a reason. Um, Arguably the hardest puncher in the sport. And in the 8th round, boom, and it was over. Single right hand landed square on the jaw. Well, jaw, square on the face, flush on the face of Ortiz. He went down. His eyes bulged as once he hit the floor, and he was too wobbly as he got up, and the referee decided to stop the fight. Your impressions of what you saw? Did you note any significant improvements in Wilder, or do you just think it was a case of him just waiting for one punch, and once he knew he was going to land that punch, it was going to be it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was a KO in the 7th round.
Seventh round. I'm sorry, seventh
yeah.
round. You're right, seventh round.
But I agree with you. I mean, in the first fight, I believe he knocked down Ortiz in like the 4th round, I believe.
Yes.
And then Ortiz, had that 7th round, and then eventually he caught Ortiz and dropped him up a couple times to stop him. In this fight, it was a very kind of slow start fight. Ortiz was trying to land his left hand. Wilder had talked previously about a left hook he was working on. I think he even called it like a super punch, or he was working on some type of super punch. So I think that was done strategically, though, because we all know the right hand is the power hand, and he's got just crazy power. And it's crazy because he comes in like maybe like 219 pounds or whatever, but he's able to generate so much power with that hand. But I think it's a good strategy to say that he's working on another punch, because then that gets the other guys worried about something else and they're not looking for that right hand. So I thought that Ortiz made probably the biggest mistake was, don't forget about that right hand. It's coming. Don't put yourself in a position to get hit with it, and he got hit with it. And he got hurt. And I think Wilder even hurt him. I want to say it was like in the third round or something like that. He caught him with a little check hook, and he looked like he kind of hurt him a little bit. So Ortiz is an old guy. We don't know officially how old he is, but he's in his 40s for sure. He could still compete at the top level, but is there any point at this stage when you can't beat the champion? You've tried twice, and like Wilder says, I think Wilder knows his limitations in a way. He doesn't need to be, you have to fight a perfect fight against him, and all he needs is 2 seconds, and that proved to be the case. But did I see anything? I don't think Wilder. I've never thought that Wilder had the greatest boxing skills, and I don't think that he's really developed great boxing skills, and nor do I think he will, because his right hand always seems to bail him out, with the exception of the Fury fight. That was, I think he knocked him down in the 9th round, and then in the 12th round, he hit him with the left, like hook uppercut, to put him down. But yeah, I mean, there's not much more you can say. I mean, it wasn't exciting until it was, and you got to give Wilder credit for as much as I think that he doesn't have the skills that a lot of other fighters have. He's been able to carry that one trick this far. He's got he's 42-0 and 1 with 41 knockouts. I mean, that's pretty significant, and he's beat a lot of the top guys, so I got to give him credit for that.
I see Gail has joined us. I'll go to you right quickly, Gail. Your impressions of what you saw in the rematch between Wilder and Ortiz.
Well, it went not. It was not a terrific surprise for any of us, I don't think, the way it ended. But perhaps the way it began, Ortiz showed a little more skill, a little more condition, and a little better game plan than he did in the first fight. But when you've got an equalizer punch like Wilder does, he really said it best in the post-fight news conference. He said, these guys have to be perfect for me for 12 rounds. I only have to be perfect for 2 seconds. And he's absolutely right. It did not matter that Ortiz controlled the action through the first 6 rounds. It didn't matter that he was in maybe the best condition of his professional career, maybe not his entire career, but for those of us having watched him only in his, recent professional days, he looked great. He looked great when I saw him actually on Halloween Day in the gym in Las Vegas. His strategy was right on. It would have worked probably against any other top heavyweight except Wilder. Again, Wilder said it himself. He doesn't care if he's losing the fight in every round on the scorecards. He doesn't care because he's got that power. And when he has power like that, scorecards, in every other fight except one in his entire career, professional career, scorecards have gone in the shredder. They were of no use in the end because he, losing rounds, he could fix that if somebody makes a mistake, and if he's patient, he waits for the right opening, gets himself in position, and throws. His fundamentals, maybe not textbook. His footing, not textbook. His speed, for a guy that big, okay, not crazy, good. His jab, has gotten a lot better over the years. He's still not busy enough with it. And everything we can say about him and everything we can say about one of his opponents goes out the window once he throws that right hand and connects, just like he did on Saturday. And what that says is, he presents a flavor to boxing that not a lot of other guys can. Is he the hardest hitting puncher in boxing history? That's a parlor game for guys to argue about, forever. It's not textbook. He said, what I do is not textbook. You can't teach it. That is absolutely true. You would never show video of Wilder to a young fighter who doesn't have the equalizer punch. He's just one of those anomalies in boxing that comes along once in a generation. And that's what makes him such an intriguing fighter to watch. And the truth is, the first half of that fight, well, the first 6 rounds, I should say, not the first half of the fight, they weren't something you were going to tell your grandchildren about. But that 7th round was. That's why he's valuable to boxing.
And that's why he's becoming such a hot commodity, not just in boxing, but he's starting to enter the mainstream sports realm as well. You mentioned the power, Gail. It's not just the power that Wilder, it's the power tied to this undying self-belief.
Absolutely.
And confidence.
Yeah. Every good boxer has to have confidence, but have you noticed how his personality?
But for him, I get the sense that it's more than most. A lot of folks can punch, but the difference between him, he truly, deep down in his spirit, believes in his power, believes in his ability to get there. Not every fighter has that.
You know who does, which is so interesting? Naoya Inoue. Now, maybe that's changed a little bit after his tangle with Donaire, but I would say up to that fight and probably afterward, you would say the same thing about Inoue. He walks in there, delivers that one hitter quitter and walks away like, yep, got it, told you. It's just not even a question in his mind. And that's a psychological edge that Wilder's been able to develop over the years too. And as he's had more fights and had more opportunities to interact with the media, develop the way he projects his personality, has figured out how to use that psychology. He does that really well too. And that goes along with that power. He scares a lot of guys before they even get in with him because they know they cannot waver in their focus for a second. They cannot make one single mistake. There's only a few guys that have the opportunity to get in there and believe they can work around him. I mean, truly believe it. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as we talk about what's next.
And the common theme, I'm glad you mentioned that between Wilder and Inoue, and it proved itself in Inoue's last fight, and that's why your comparison is so apt, Gil. It's that both showed power in the midst of adversity. With Wilder, he showed it in the first fight with Ortiz. In Inoue, he showed it in his recent fight with Donaire when Donaire began to rally round 8-9. How both responded in a way that, dare I say, showed a certain level of greatness, particularly Inoue, because skill-wise, Donaire is on a level higher than I would argue anybody that Wilder has faced. He was facing a storm in a way. Not just he got hurt, he was fighting through such difficulty with the fractured orbital bone, the broken nose. That's a special quality that both men displayed, and that's why you can make a comparison between the two. Both have that undying belief in self. You wanted to say something, Jacob?
No, I was gonna just kind of touch on what Gil was saying, was that, these guys that have the belief, when you continue to win fights the way that Wilder does, there's no, I mean, it just fuels that fire, because he can take all the criticism about his actual boxing skills, but the end result, it always seems to be the same, with the exception of that Fury fight. But even in that Fury fight, he knocked him down. I mean, nobody knows how Fury got up from that knockdown a second later, and that fight's over. If our Fury just stays down, that fight's over. But he's kind of weaved this theme of, I don't need to change anything. It's not broke, because the result is always the same. He's rarely in any kind of trouble. From I don't think he hasn't been knocked down or anything like that. So he's rarely in trouble of getting knocked out. And he knows, like psychology you talked about is very similar to what Tyson had back in the 80s. Guys were already had lost before they entered the ring, because of that, just that stare and that mystique that he had. Until later, until his life kind of fell apart. But Wilder has a similar mystique, because they know that right hand, if they get hit by it, it's almost game over. So it's his level of belief is only going to increase from here. I mean, there's nothing really to tell him that isn't true.
Yeah, right now he can't be knocked off of his square. He can't be knocked off of his square. After the fight, Wilder basically admitted what we already knew. He's going to fight Fury next February 2nd. Two questions I want to pose to you guys. Dramatic first fight. Fury was winning, in my opinion. He won the majority of the rounds. Wilder saved himself with the two knockdowns, particularly the one in the final round, in which Fury, as you know, Jacob pulled the Undertaker move and got up from death almost, or damn near death. One, how do you think, and I'll begin the conversation with you, Gail, how do you think things will go in the rematch, given what you've seen from both men post their first fight? Two, there was been a lot of discussion on Twitter, particularly after the fight, in terms of Wilder's ranking in the heavyweight division all time. I've seen more than one person make the argument that Wilder is an ATG heavyweight, all-time great heavyweight. He belongs up there with the best of the best. Personally, I think he's a great puncher. He hasn't shown himself to be a great heavyweight. So the questions are, how do you think the rematch will go between Wilder and Fury? One. Two, what do you think about all the talk that spawned after this fight with Ortiz, in terms of Wilder's standing, in terms of the great heavyweights of all time?
Let's talk about the rematch. Like everybody else, Fury cannot make a mistake, because Wilder makes you pay in a way that, the tab is high. You make a mistake, you pay. It's a big, big price because of that power. But if there's anybody that can avoid it and can outbox him, I do think it's Tyson Fury. Can he do it? I'm not sure. Does he have the ability to do it? Yes, I do think he does. And it depends a lot on what he learned from the first fight and how well he executes the game plan. When two guys come together who are both very good at what they do, but approach it in a very different way, it's always about who can impose their version of the fight on the other man. And probably the only guy, at least in that division, who has the same amount of confidence as Wilder is Tyson Fury. So it really is going to be the big fight, I think, of the first half of 2020. To the other question, is Deontay Wilder one of the all-time greats in the heavyweight division? Well, not yet. Will he be? Maybe he will. I think he needs a victory over Fury, and I think he needs a victory over whoever is hold all those other belts after we see what happens in Saudi Arabia and how that half of the division all sorts itself out. He's going to need to take on whoever rises to the top of that part of the food chain in addition to Fury. Now, if he beats everybody and by this time next year he's the last man standing, yes, then I'll give it to him. But we don't know what's going to happen in Saudi Arabia, and we don't know what's going to happen in February. Let's see what happens. I'm going to hold back until then. Give him his due for being absolutely one of the most spectacular power punchers boxing has ever produced. That I'll give you. But it generally takes a little more craft than that to consider somebody an all-time great representative of the entire sport. But no doubt, he's a big personality. He drives fans to the sport. I love the way he's matured, how he handles himself, how he speaks in interviews. One of the things that amused me so much in his post-fight news conference was sort of admitting that, he wasn't all that thrilled with the whole bomb squad thing anymore because it took so much energy for him to yell and go with it. But he was sort of rationing how many big bomb squad shout outs he does anymore. But hey, he's stuck with it now. So I have to live with it. That's the sort of admission of, I'm a little older and wiser, and maybe I wouldn't have chosen that for my call, to arms, if you had to ask me now. But the outfits, man, someone's going to have to explain some of that stuff to me later.
I'll go to you, Jacob. First of all, let me read some comments here in the chat. Shout out to Ivan DC20 for checking us out live on YouTube. He says that Ortiz was doing a perfect fight. I had him winning 6-0 in rounds, but I like Wilder himself. But like Wilder himself says, he can end a fight with only one punch. It was the only good punch that he landed and KO. He also says, I don't think anyone can handle Wilder's power in the heavyweight division. If Joshua couldn't handle Ruiz, then he will most likely not be able to handle Wilder. He says the only one I think who could possibly handle it is Ruiz. He says he took Joshua straight right hand great after being put down. It was a strong and solid blow, and he took it great, but not sure though. Says Wilder's power is something else. I'll go to you, Jacob. I'll also pose the same question to you that I asked Gail. How do you think this rematch between Wilder and Fury will go? And what do you think about all this talk afterwards about Wilder? And he deserves to be placed among the all-time great heavyweights.
So first question, how I think the rematch is going to go. I actually think that Wilder will stop Fury. I think what Wilder showed me in this last fight, which he did not do in the first Fury fight, was he was very impatient in that fight. He was throwing like haymakers, trying to take out Fury with one shot, and Fury was using movement to basically avoid that, and trying to use his jab. I think Wilder, when he uses his jab and he sets up his punches, instead of just trying to land that haymaker, he knows that he has that power and stuff, and he did. I believe, like I said before, I believe that he did hurt Ortiz with a little hook. I think it was like in the third or fourth round, like a little left hook. So I know he's working on that punch. So if he's patient with Fury, Fury isn't going to if Fury's not the type of fighter, he talks like he's going to go out there and knock everybody out, but he doesn't fight that way. He fights with the, distance and movement. But if he can be patient and set up his punches and use his jab, I think he can land on Fury and put him out. Instead of punching him with the left hand, punch him with that right hand and just, lay him out. Fury's last performance wasn't impressive to me at all. I think it showed a lot of flaws in Fury. I'm not one of the Fury believers. I don't think that he's that great. I think he talks like he's great, and he's had two I guess decent wins in my opinion, like two the Vladimir, but that was like one of the worst fights I've ever seen. There wasn't a whole lot of action, and part of that's Vlad, I don't think he didn't fight like when he fought Joshua. He fought like, I don't know. There's something, wrong with him. Maybe he was having some personal issues. I know his wife was, she had postpartum, and he's dealing with all that. And he lost his trainer, Emmanuel Stewart. So I think it would have been a different story if those things hadn't played into it. But yeah, I think that Wilder is gonna put a statement on that. I think he's gonna be patient, and he's gonna land the punch that's gonna put Fury out. As far as him being an all-time great, I'm with Gail on this. I think he's an all-time great puncher, but to me, it takes a little bit more than that, and I would like to see him, and this is not his fault, completely. As far as like his resume, like if I go down his resume, I don't see a lot of like top guys besides, Ortiz and Fury. He's kind of a victim of circumstance of the time. Like I would love to see him fight like a Wilder. A Vladimir Klitschko, or something like that. Or even like a Lennox Lewis and Vander Holyfield. All these eras of heavyweights. Riddick Bowe, but he just doesn't have that right now. And the only kind of people that are in the wings is of course Joshua, which is the fight that we want to see. But also Ruiz. Ruiz would be an interesting fight. I think I'd like to see him against Parker. I'd like to see him against what's his face, Dillian White. There's some guys out there that I wouldn't mind seeing him kind of build up his resume. That guy that beat Areola, what's his name? Polish guy, Zawaki or whatever his name is. Kanaki, sorry.
Yeah.
These are guys that I think if he can, beat these guys convincingly, then he can be in the talks of maybe an all-time great, and depending on how he beats them, as long as there's no controversy. But to me, his resume, if you look at him, comparing him to other great heavyweights of different eras, I just don't think that he has the resume to do that. But again, a lot of it's not his fault. Sometimes you're a victim of the time that you're in, as far as what kind of competition is out there, and of course the politics of boxing with the different organizations and PBC being pretty much exclusively on this side of the street and everybody else on the other side of the street.
As I stated earlier, Wilder's an all-time great puncher. He's not an all-time great heavyweight at this point. As far as the rematch, I'm of two mindsets here. One is that Fury will outbox Wilder until Wilder finds home with the right hand, and once he finds home with the right hand, he's going to knock him out this time because, as you noted, Jacob, Wilder is fighting with more patience. The other thing is something that Gail said that sticks in my mind, and that is if there's one fighter who carries the confidence, the same level of confidence that Deontay Wilder does, it's one Tyson Fury. And we have to mention here, Wilder landed the bomb in that fight. Fury got up. Not only did
left
Fury
hand,
get
he
up,
landed the left hand though. It wasn't the right hand.
but still he got up. He got up, he fought back, and he had Wilder on the back foot at the end of that fight. Could that moment stick in Wilder's head and think, I landed one of my best punches here and I wasn't able to take him out and he came back at me? It will be interesting, that dynamic of what we saw in the end of that fight. Could that carry over somehow into the rematch? If it does, and we know that Fury can box circles around him. Wilder may have improved, but he ain't the level of skill that Tyson Fury is. Tyson Fury cannot box him all day, every day.
There's another factor I forgot to mention though too. Fury, I don't know how concentrated he is on this rematch. He's been talking about going to doing an MMA boxing match with Miocic, and he's dabbbling in wrestling. So
he's selling wolf tickets with that.
I know, but you could be distracted. You could be distracted going into a fight if you're looking at these other options. It can cause a distraction, and you need to be focused against Wilder. In my opinion.
I'm thinking. See, I think he's just throwing that out there just to get people to talk. That's the equivalent of clickbait to me.
Absolutely right. I agree. Fury's best chance is to make it as boring a technical fight as he possibly can. Stay outside, come at him with angles, do the things that Ortiz was doing well and make sure he executes, not make a mistake. I think he's more capable of that. He needs to fight, frankly, like he did in some ways against Klitschko.
And it would help if he could find a way to not just stun Wilder, but legit hurt him.
Yes, I mean that would certainly help him, but I don't think it's an absolute necessity if he can turn this into a technical fight. Again, it always comes down to whose version of the fight plan gets imposed. And, Fury has a good one if he can execute it and make it stick. Wilder is just got that X factor. That's what makes it so interesting, because most guys have to overcome someone else's game plan with a little more than that few seconds of work.
Again, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. A rematch I'm really looking forward to. Another factor is, excuse me, whether Fury's cut will heal significantly enough in time for that rematch, because there was a nasty gash he's suffering in his last fight, and a gash to the point that he could get touched again with not the hardest punch, and it could open up again on him. But February 2020, really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. One of the more intriguing heavyweight rematches in recent memory. Let's move on to talk about some other fights here. I'm going to split these fights up. Going back to you, Jacob, Leo Santa Cruz, he fought on the undercard against Miguel Flores. I'm watching this. Well, I watched it. I didn't watch it live. Like I said, I was covering some fights for Three Kings Boxing, covering the Cancio cards, which we got a lot to talk about in terms of that, Gail. But I'm watching this Leo Santa Cruz fight, Jacob, and I'm like, okay, he's winning. He looks decent. But I still had a general feeling of, he won. But I was left empty. I still can't get my mind out of the fact that he's moving up to 130 pounds, but he had work to do at 126. I can't get the situation with him and Russell out of my head. And I find it a little bit ironic that he was calling out Tank Davis prior to this fight, given the shenanigans that Russell was pulling in order to get a fight with Santa Cruz. Your reaction to the fight itself, Jacob?
The fight was very meh to me. I mean, it was. He was basically, chasing around Flores for the better part of the fight, and Flores was, just kind of hanging around, not really doing anything. It didn't seem like he was trying to win the fight, Flores. In a way, it seemed like it's kind of just a setup fight to introduce him to that division, get him a belt. Unfortunately, it was a vacant belt, but it's I mean the fights that I want to see Leo Santa Cruz in, like he was kind of like in this for a long time he was in this pocket of, oh, is he really good? We don't know if he's really good because this competition hadn't been that good. And then when he stepped up and he showed us that he was a good fighter and that he could hang with the top guys, he kind of went back into obscurity again and just kind of having these, fights against guys that we didn't really want to see him against, So, he's had a very strange career. Like, I don't think. Yeah, obviously he's not getting any younger, and I think he's kind of wasting his prime years by doing this. But I mean, there's part of that is, if he's allowed these opportunities, to win belts in other divisions, and there's little damage and he's going to make a bunch of money, can I really fault him for that? I mean, I can as a fan, and want to expect more, but I mean, these guys, with all the tragedies that we've had in the sport, and it's their job, and if someone's going to pay him $1 million to go fight some guy that's not going to give him too much work, then I guess that's he's got kind of an easy job in that respect. But it is disappointing because I do think he's talented. I would love to see him against a bunch of guys at the before he moved up, at the weight he was, but featherweight, and I don't know where he goes from here. I mean, I don't know if he tries to go back down and try to make a big fight, but it's disappointing.
Shout out to MC Royal who joined us. He says in the YouTube chat, great weekends of fights. I wanted to see Luis Nery fight, and once again he disappointed by not making weight. He got his fight canceled. Man, look, you're right about that. I'm about over Mr. Nery. For those who do not know, Luis Nery was set to fight Emmanuel Rodriguez on the undercard of Wilder Ortiz rematch. Came in a pound overweight. Manny Rodriguez basically said because he was overweight, he could have fought him anyway, but he decided no, he's not going to do that. Part of me is frustrated. Part of me is like he did that because he really didn't want to fight, low key. But at the same time, this ultimately falls on Nery, who once again fails to make weight in a fight. He ought to stop BSing around and move up to 122 where he really belongs. But it's a side issue. Going back to Leo Santa Cruz, to Jacob's point, you want to get upset at him because, let's be honest here, he ducked Rigo at 122. He could have fought a third fight with Frampton, but he said no because he didn't want to go overseas. We know the situation with Russell. There are other fights that could have happened for him at 126 pounds. But at the same time, when you can get away with it and you making 7 figures a fight, it's like, yeah, you don't like it, but these are the breaks.
And you can get a belt in a 4th weight division. I mean, it is really hard to argue with him taking this fight for all the reasons you elaborated on and getting that 4th division belt. Now, Jacob, he's made it fairly clear that this is a one-off thing. He wanted to give himself a title opportunity in a 4th division, but that he fully intends to come back down. He called out Tank. He called out Russell. I will only get upset with him if he doesn't make that stick in 2020. He needs to fight one of those guys, but he says he plans to stay there, go after those guys, and I'll see if he's true to his word.
But Tank is moving up to 135 though.
Well, if Tank wants him, Tank needs to then stick around. If Tank says, no, you missed your chance, well, the window closes, then he needs to keep an eye on Gary Russell. And, Russell's got his own problems. If we're throwing shade at these guys, Russell needs to fight more than once a year. And other guys could get some of it if he do that. But when you fight once a year and then go hibernate, I don't know what the hell else he does for 9 months a year that keeps him so busy. But that's a problem too. I think it's really interesting, Jacob's impression of the fight, of it being, kind of meh, kind of boring. Between these two guys, they threw almost 2,000 punches. That, you see those stats, and you wouldn't expect, a knowledgeable observer to say, kind of a boring fight. But, they landed between them. Santa Cruz landed 28% of the punches. Flores 22. You know, when you're punching at balls.
Okay. For me,
But there's a difference between just throwing punches that are scoring and that are being counted by CompuBox and effective punching. You know,
yeah, I'm
you
with
can do
Jacob on this.
you can do a bunch of pitter patter
You just didn't
punches,
get
but
the
that doesn't mean shit.
But
you
Santa
didn't get
Cruz
the
has
you
never
didn't
been
get
a
the
power
I
fighter.
didn't get the general buzz in this fight that I've gotten that I've received that I've got in other bouts when there's been high volume punching.
Oh, of course, absolutely, I agree. But it wasn't like they were standing around looking at each other either. So the question mark comes up over the top of my head. Yeah, no, it didn't. It didn't have all. It didn't have that flavor to it. Buzzy. It wasn't a brawl. They were busy enough. They sort of ground away on each other, but yeah, it ends up being a bit of a lackluster fight. I mean, Weeks ended up penalizing Flores, the referee Tony Weeks, for holding. I mean,
Yeah, and I don't blame Santa Cruz in this particular incident, because Flores wasn't trying to really fight. He was doing a lot of backing up and just kind of trying to avoid the fight, in my opinion.
Flores was fighting from a defensive posture. As busy as he was, it wasn't to
Right.
score. It was more to block Santa Cruz.
Right. But again, you're not gonna. In my opinion, you're not gonna win a fight like that. And you're trying to, if you're trying to seriously win the belt, like when people fight for a belt, I would like to see a little bit more of a sense of urgency on both sides. So I think Leo Santa Cruz was coming forward and doing what he needed to do, but it was just like the style of Flores and the way he was fighting wasn't making it an exciting fight to me, even though they threw a bunch of punches. And I agree with you. I think, if Santa Cruz can fight a Tank Davis or a Russell, he has to fight one of them or some top guy, that we want to see in 2020, then great. But, he also, like Russell, he doesn't fight a ton, like he's really slowed down his output. Like, I think he had one fight in 2018, or no, 2019. He had, he's had, or 2018, he had one fight, 2 fights this year. And then, the year before, I think he had like maybe 2 fights. So it's not like he's, having a bunch of fights either.
No, admittedly, also, we have to grant him that the situation with his father is distracting. And I'll give him a touch of a pass for that situation as well.
I see Daniel has joined us. Let's get him into the conversation, Dan.
Hold on, I want
Daniel,
to. Gail, are you saying all this stuff because he's in your picture, your profile there?
No.
Just kidding. I'm
kidding. And that was a random encounter. So hey, I had to swap out my picture for this week. So I can go back to Canelo's text if you prefer.
I see Daniel has joined us. Daniel from the Inscriber. Let's get him into the conversation. We're talking Leo Santa Cruz and his recent win over Flores at 130 pounds. And we're kind of having the discussion here about Santa Cruz and his career up to this point. Your thoughts on what you've heard from the back and forth banter so far?
Part of me really, really legitimately agrees in the fact that, unfortunately, even for a Santa Cruz fight, it really wasn't that good. And as far as that sense, but it's a fight that Santa Cruz, from a style standpoint, is going to win. Like, he's going to throw a lot of punches. He's not going to land a lot of those punches. You just have to make sure that he landed more than the other guy, and which is what he did. Was it a spectacular fight? No. Was it a fight that people are going to clamor to see, considering what was on the zone the same night? Oh, hell no. But it does give an accolade to Santa Cruz that we should call it, I would say, Broner-esque in a way, because it feels in almost the same way that when Broner tried to say he was a 4-division champion, even though he stepped up way above his weight class. And in this sense, only calling out the PBC guys, everybody knows if people want to see you near that weight class, You're still 130 pounds. Loma, I'm going to say Loma pretty much said he could probably go down to 130. You know he
You
can
don't want
probably
that.
go do it.
You don't want that. He ain't that dumb.
No, but going after a guy who, okay, going against Tank, who's probably going to stay at lightweight, or calling for Gary Russell, who we kind of know is already in his yearly sabbatical. It just doesn't make sense. Granted, yeah, you won an accolade, you won a world title in that weight class, and you won a title that was vacated there, which wasn't the real title. The actual title was fought in the zone. It was just mad. Even for a Santa Cruz fight, that's the unfortunate thing when it comes to Santa Cruz. He fights the same way throughout most of his fights, and unfortunately, it's become less exciting to watch. I don't know if it's because since he's going up in weight class, that's like the same pop that he had at bantamweight isn't there. But at the same time, like the same tricks that have to work. There's only one. There's only a certain thing where only one way of fighting works in. Everybody, especially the greats, add something or change a little bit of their dynamic as they move on. And unfortunately, Santa Cruz hasn't taken that step in many ways.
I'm going back to you, Daniel. Keep your mic open. I'm going to try to bring you up to date. We began the show talking about Wilder and Ortiz. Quickly, your thoughts on the fight. 3 questions here. Your thoughts on the fight. How your thoughts on the rematch that's going to happen with Fury, and your reaction to the discussion that's popped up after the fight about Wilder now deserving a spot on that. Wilder is now an ATG heavyweight.
Okay, the first big thing on the fight is when it comes to Wilder, this has become pretty self-evident. He has the most devastating sleeper in the sport. And you notice it throughout the fight. Like he was losing by a wide margin to Ortiz. But we got to give credit to him in this sense. The punch that ultimately took the soul out of Ortiz, both figuratively and literally in the form of sweat, wasn't like a wild punch, wasn't a windmill punch. It was a punch coming off of a feint. I think a lot of people missed that. Like he came off a feint of a jab, got Ortiz's attention enough to the point where Ortiz moved his left hand slightly inward to not be as protective as it was before in the fight, with just enough time for him to land a nice right cross, and you saw the results. And you saw the results in that. Deontay Wilder has proven time and time again now that he can lose the fight on points, but he now makes sure that it'll never get to the point where it gets on points. And that's rare.
Go ahead.
And that's rare. That's rare for somebody in this heavyweight now. Rematch with Fury. Okay, you have to prove to me that Fury first is not interested in trying to join in the Royal Rumble in January before anything, because he's having too much fun there in WWE where he doesn't really have to do anything. And I'm still worried about that cut. I'm sorry. It looks like he's healed, but I'm still worried about that cut. And as far as the discussion, there's unfortunately a lot in the skill department that you can't really put him as far as like the all-time great over all heavyweights. But you can definitely put him among the all-time great heavyweight punchers. Because it's not as violent as Tyson's punch. Because Tyson knocked out people more violently. It isn't as skillful as Foreman's punch. Because Foreman was more technically sound. but I forgot who said this. But as far as pure, raw power, I don't think I've ever seen, at least in the heavyweights, from something like that. I've never seen something like that coming from somebody else in recent memory as it comes from Deontay Wilder. Not even people like Joshua or even Ortiz. Remember, Ortiz, even before this fight, was known to probably have some of the heaviest hands in the division. You can't teach that. You can't teach that raw power that Deontay Wilder has. But you have to put him now in the category of the punchers. And he does improve little bits every single thing in the fight. He has to make that gigantic leap that all great fighters have to make at a certain point to where they put it all together. He'll have the chance to in February.
I'm going to some more fights here to talk about. The question, I'm going to skip talking about Brandon Figueroa, Julio Ceja, because quite honestly, I don't know if anybody really wants to talk about that fight. Read a couple more comments.
Did you guys not like that
stop?
fight? I thought it was a good fight.
Good fight, but I don't know how many people actually saw it. So if you want to discuss it right quick, Jacob, please do.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was like arguably one of the fight of the nights. It was a really, really good fight. They were thrown down, and you can make a case. I think that Ceja won that fight, but Figueroa didn't do badly, but Ceja fought very similar how he fought Rigondeaux before he got knocked out, but he was just putting it on him. And I think they threw a bunch of punches in that fight. I think they might have even broke the record or something, or they're up there in the record. They threw a lot of punches in that fight, but to me, it was a very entertaining fight. A lot of back and forth, ebbs and flow. Ended in a split draw, but hopefully they run it back. But Ceja, for his flaws that he has, I think he's pretty good fighter. He's lost his last 3 fights, he's lost 2 of them, and then now had a draw. So, but I like him. I think he's a good fighter. He's a good, exciting fighter. And Figueroa, he's obviously the better one of the Figueroa family, because Omar is trash.
I wouldn't say Omar is. Well, he's not as good in the division that he's on now as he was like at 130 or 135. But yeah, you could definitely tell their brothers by the lack of defense, and they came to this fight. But I thoroughly believe that the draw was the perfect decision for this fight. You can definitely make a case for either person. I could see Jacob's point more towards Ceja, but that was a rockin' sopping fight that I definitely want to see again. And hopefully we will see it again pretty soon.
I said I was going to split these fights up, and I am, but I got to get off. I have a question for everyone here. First of all, some more comments in the chat. Ivan DC20 said that in terms of Leo Santa Cruz, he said Santa Cruz can do better. He said Santa Cruz can do better. He had a really long layoff. He said it also matters that Flores doesn't really have power either. He says Santa Cruz throws, lands a lot, and has decent power. Flores doesn't have decent enough power, with all due respect. He says Omar Figueroa isn't as disciplined as Brandon. That's being polite. He says also that you will eventually go further if you also have discipline. Yeah, Omar Figueroa, he's the opposite of discipline. Back to my question that I have for everyone here. Convince me, give me a reason to not feel that John Ryder beat Callum Smith Saturday in the UK. I didn't watch the fight live because I was at work. But when I did watch it Sunday, I felt that John Ryder beat Callum Smith. As of this recording, I still feel that John Ryder beat Callum Smith. I need someone here to convince me that Callum did not beat Callum Smith. I'm all ears.
I thought I don't disagree with you. I thought the fight was, the cards were completely garbage. They were way too wide. I thought at the worst it could be a draw. I thought it was a very close fight. I thought there was some very close rounds in there, but Callum Smith for some reason let John Ryder push him around, push him to the ropes, work off the ropes, and I think only in the 9th round did he, for one time, did he step to his, I think it was to his right, and John Ryder went right into the ropes, instead of just getting bullied back to his ropes. So I don't know what his game plan was, but we've seen Callum Smith, though, have performances that haven't been that great. He's had some great performances, and then he's had some performances that have just been kind of, lackluster. So he's a little, he's kind of up and down. I don't think, I think that Ryder deserves a rematch for sure. And he should have probably walked away with the belt, but he was in Liverpool, so it's not the first time that someone's gotten home cooking before, and it won't be the last.
Gail, Jacob, can you convince me?
You're going to be waiting a long
Gail and Daniel, I should say. Any way you can convince me?
No, because you have to convince me first before I can convince you. Now, that was an absolute robbery. Liverpool is becoming the Las Vegas of Great Britain. That was just ridiculous. And if I'm Canelo Alvarez and I watched that, I am all over Callum Smith for a fight. He did not look fearsome, formidable, tough. If I'm Canelo sitting at home having a Hennessy, I'm like, bring me that. Hell yes, as long as it's not in the UK. Now that would be and even then, I might think, I could for sure get the better of this guy. He's not all that. That was my overriding impression watching the fight, other than thinking Ryder absolutely had it. He gets robbed. After you hear the numbers, you kind of think, well, okay, yeah, like that wasn't entirely unexpected. And then thinking, okay, a month ago I would have said, I'm not sure Canelo wants to take on Callum Smith. I don't think he has anything to worry about based on that performance. Maybe it was a fluke. But wow, Ryder absolutely got robbed.
Classic case of an A-side fighter getting the benefit of the doubt, Daniel.
First things first, you had to convince me that wasn't a Frank Warren card. In the end, with that way, because it gave me shades of Flanagan Petrov and Billy Ho Akabov.
Your favorite fighters. Always talking about your favorite fighters, man.
I know he was going to go there.
We all knew he was going there.
Yeah. Armando.
You know what, Daniel? You never disappointed.
Daniel, if you didn't talk about those guys so much, I'd almost think you were a fan. You're like the only person that talks about them.
Well, Jacob, if he didn't talk about him, we'd start worrying if he was feeling okay.
No, but that is the whole point. That's the whole point. Callum did not win that fight at all, and it's getting pretty bad. Okay, I understand the matchroom scenario. Okay, you want to appear in a big fight. Obviously, Canelo doesn't pretty much want to face Golovkin just out of pride. So next thing up is good.
That's a troll move on Canelo. That's a troll move. He's trolling.
I know that's a troll move. So then
it's a troll move. Canelo's being an asshole.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Out of pride and pettiness. So then the next fight you can line up is Callum. because then he would have a legitimate title at super middleweight. Right now, he has a legitimate title at light heavyweight because I don't think he has officially vacated it yet. Like a valedictorian level claim.
Speaking of that, I need to call my contact at the WBO about that.
Yeah.
In terms of Kovalev, yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, so he has, like I said, he has a valedictorian level claim to middleweight titles, and that's pretty much what he has. It's super middleweight. All he has right now is one of the WBA's 17 versions of the title.
More like 20, but proceed.
Yeah. So right now, looking at that, yeah, I'm salivating. I'm salivating if I'm Canelo, if I'm the Reynosos, because it's starting to look a little bit like Callum maybe food. At least when you compare to somebody like Canelo, who's not going to let him off the hook when it comes to work rate and body punching. Now, we can all agree, yeah, it might be an off night. It might be a situation where he just fought down to a level of competition. It does happen.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, Daniel. Do you think it's a situation of where he didn't take the Ryder fight seriously, and he wasn't maybe as prepared? But when if he gets a Canelo fight, I don't think he's not gonna look at it in that same light.
I hope not. That's where I hope he doesn't take it in the same light. But I hope it is that case where he just fought down to the level of competition. But at the same time, if you're a lower level fighter and Eddie Hearn calls you saying you want to fight Callum Smith, you got to take that as seriously as possible, because now you look at this situation, there's a legitimate chance that you might upset this guy.
Ivan says in the chat, he says, everyone in the media was hyping up Callum Smith like he was the next Andre Ward. Very few people saw his defects before the fight. If he fights Canelo next, he will eat him up like fish and chips. He says Callum is too slow for Canelo's counterpunches. I will say this. The Smith that I saw against George Groves, and even Endam, I feel will give Canelo a heck of a fight and has a good chance to beat him. The Smith that we saw this past weekend against Ryder, he loses and he loses badly. He loses and he loses badly. He has to perform. Smith has to perform a whole lot better.
Who was saying he was the next Ward? Who said that?
I don't know who was saying that, but I'm just going by Ivan's comments. Maybe that was the vibe in the UK.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But yeah.
Or actually, I do know about that. He's not nowhere near a Ward.
I still think he is a good fighter, but he was underwhelming to say the least against John Ryder, who he should have had a far easier time with. Move on to some more fights here. Going to your neck of the woods, Gail. Indio, you was at this card covering it for Communities Digital News. I want to start first by talking Zhu Khan, fighting Manny Robles. And here's the thing, Gail. The more I watch Zhu Khan, the more I like him as a fighter. I think he's underrated. Zhu Khan defending his a version of the WBA title against Robles, beat him by decision. The thing I like about Khan, Gail, is he's a guy who, to the casual observer, seems just average. But if you watch him closely, he does some real good, subtle things in there. There's not a real bad aspect of his game. His conditioning is outstanding. His jab is very good. I love the variety of his punches, his distribution. He throws every punch from every angle. And though he doesn't have quote unquote one punch power, he is a guy who varies the intensity of his punches. Sometimes he just throws it out there quickly to land. There are other times he throws it out there to, excuse me, he throws it out there to, he will put more force in his punches. That kind of guy, it's hard to gauge him. He keeps you on. You can't read a guy like that, and and because of that he can low key hurt you when you don't expect it. Your reaction to what you saw from Zukan in his fight with Robles?
Like you, I'm really warming up to him. I liked what I saw. He's much more impressive in person. You see how he uses the tools he has to the absolute best of his ability. You know, he is the opposite of a Deontay Wilder. He does not have a lot of power, and he certainly doesn't have that one punch cracking sort of power. But he works with what he's got. He's incredibly well conditioned. The guy never tires out, never slows down, never takes a breath. And when you're an opponent being smothered like that from start to finish, you never get a break. And it makes it very hard for you to think on your feet, adjust, focus. And when you're a somewhat still inexperienced guy like Manny Robles III is, the man couldn't breathe. He could never get his bearings, and you know he just got overwhelmed by Zukan. I mean, if Khan had any power, he would have knocked him out. And Robles isn't a particularly hard puncher either. So Khan showed no fear of him at all, and very interesting approach. The other fun thing was there was a surprisingly large contingent of Chinese fans from China, not folks who'd just driven over from LA, in the crowd, banners, flags, chanting, call and response, stomping the bleachers. It sounded like a high school basketball game at different points. And it was just a damn good time. And
I mean, the clip that you shared of the Chinese contingent cheering for Zhu Khan while dancing to Snoop Dogg.
And they were getting their groove on with the DJ between every round. I mean, when it was Tupac, when it was Snoop, when it was whatever, they were into it. They were just into it. And who doesn't love that sort of fan enthusiasm? The media from China traveled as well. Mainland Chinese media was there watching him. He's their only current title holder on the professional side. And, they were there supporting him. I found the fight very fun to watch. I didn't need a knockout. It was action-packed. It was a thrill a minute. Robles is trying to figure out what the hell can I do with this guy, and he just did not have an answer. So Zhu Khan calls out Josh Harrington. I'm not mad about that.
And did it in English.
And his English is getting quite a bit better. And he communicates quite well with the English-speaking media just because he's so friendly. He's just so affable. He enjoys it. After the card was over and everything was shut down, I'm working away on my story. We're still sitting there in press row as the fans have all cleared out. And I realized that he's come in and he's sitting behind me with about 5 or 6 Chinese reporters. And, they're just hanging out, chatting away. And he had no entourage with him. Nobody. He was just sitting there with him. And good for him. He enjoyed the hell out of himself. And I'm sure he'd love to come back. He seems like one of those guys who's just absolutely game for anything. The losses on his record are very early in his career. He's learning from every fight. That's what I really like to see with guys at this level. Was he applying the lessons from the previous fight? Has he added, some new wrinkles? Has he improved a particular strength that he already has? Yes. He isn't going to deliver one-punch knockouts. He doesn't try. That's what makes a fighter like him max out the skills he does have and be successful. Good for him. I enjoyed it. And, you know, if his fans are coming with him, I'd love to see him again.
I see your question, Ivan, and we will ask about that once we talk about Cancio. I'll go to you. First, you, Daniel, and then you, Jacob. If you saw the fight, your impressions of Shu Khan's win over Robles. Personally, I'll say it again. I was highly impressed by what I saw.
Yeah. He is learning very, very good in the fight. I remember seeing Zuhan early Quebec, I think about a couple of years ago. You could tell he was learning. Like, he didn't quite started grasping the concept yet, but he was learning, and you can just see the improvement leaps and bounds in this fight. And when it comes to the fan involvement, I'll say it in a way. In many ways, Zukan is becoming what I think Bob Arum wanted Zhou Shiming to be, as far as like crossover appeal that you can bring from China to the U.S. Because he brought a crowd with him, and it's a very, very telling when you have a guy like that who isn't as heralded as someone like Zhou Shiming, didn't do as much history as Zhou Shiming as far as like amateur and Olympic level, start already getting that type of following. Especially considering the political climate between the U.S. and China at the moment. But very, very telling, really good version of the fight. Hope we see him again very early in 2020. And from the looks of it, we probably will.
Your thoughts, Jacob?
Yeah, I echo everybody. I was very impressed with him. I like him a lot. I think he's got good skills. Boxing's an international sport, much like football, or what we call soccer over here. There there's pockets of, whether it's Japanese fans, Thai fans, Chinese fans, European, anywhere from the European, Eastern Bloc, whatever. It's, they're all over the place. And especially in California, it's kind of a melting pot. New York is very similar to any of like the bigger cities in the United States. So it's nice to see, he has that support, but also, he can make fans out of someone like me that has no allegiance to China or to any other country. But what I like is when you can see a fighter that's going in there. Like Gil said, he doesn't have knockout power, but you don't need knockout power. Not every fighter has to be a knockout power puncher. If you can control the fight and use your skills and develop your skills to put a whooping on your opponent, then that's basically the name of the game. So I'm very excited to see him. I think Daniel kind of took the words out of my mouth. I was thinking, the Zhao Shiming, I was thinking like, oh well, kind of like with Ortiz and Golden Boy, where they're putting all their it seems like muscle behind someone like Ryan Garcia. I think they should be doing that to Ortiz, and I think Bob Arum should have, I think he has something here with Khan. So hopefully, we'll see him frequently. We'll see him, in I think he'll always be in good fights because he's just that kind of fighter. And so, hopefully we see him early next year.
You used one of the words you used to describe Khan's performance against Robles was overwhelming. I take that word and use it to describe this next fight. Cancio and his rematch against Rene Alvarado. Cancio making the second defense of the WBA 130-pound strap. Cancio was overwhelmed. Cancio was dog walked. Cancio got his ass whooped. I just have to be that blunt about it. Alvarado from second one, he came in to kick butt and take names. He swarmed. He bombarded Cancio in punches and bunches from outside. He didn't give Andrew Cancio room to breathe, who looked like he didn't even deserve to be in there in the ring with Alvarado. He was cut. He was pounded. The fight was stopped at the end of the 7th round. Could be a legit argument that the fight should have been stopped 2 rounds earlier. He was jelly-legged, badly hurt on his feet, in my opinion. That was a one-sided whooping, Gail.
It was a stunning outcome. I mean, Rene Alvarado had lost to Cancio 3 years ago in the exact same venue, got knocked out, got stopped. This was a mandatory that everyone assumed Cancio would just sort of walk through, on his way to a bigger opportunity, perhaps against somebody maybe even like Jamel Herring. He's been calling him out. Herring's been calling him back out. 2 guys with incredible backstories. Look like it could be a terrific fight heading in 2020. Rene Alvarado had other plans. He is the perfect example of a guy who came in with the game plan and executed. He was all over Cancio. And after, we observing in the arena, we thought, okay, all right, after the first round, he showed him that he meant business, and, Cancio will settle down and get to work and take care of things. Never happened. It never happened. And by about the 3rd or 4th round, you could almost see Cancio's soul leaving his body. The body language, he was demoralized. It was almost inexplicable. And he admitted after the fight, he was 2 steps behind Alvarado the entire way. Alvarado got his revenge, and that, Cancio said, hey, there's just nothing I can really say. He said, we had a great training camp. I felt good. I thought I'd, take care of business. I've got no explanation. He said, I just got hit with too many shots. No excuse. The better man won tonight. And truly, it was that simple. It was definitive. Cancio's trainer, Joseph Janik, through the last couple of rounds, kept telling Cancio, you got to show me something, son. You got to show me something. He gave him every opportunity. I think the stoppage was right. Yeah, in hindsight, it's easy to say, yeah, maybe it should have been stopped after the 5th or 6th round. I do think you give a champion who's willing to go on a little bit of a leash, but Janik said to Cancio, if you don't gain some traction in the 7th round, it's done. And he turned around and told referee Raul Caiz Sr. exactly the same thing. So Cancio was on notice. That was the right thing to do. The referee was clued in as to the desire of the trainer in the corner. And, it was over. And what a tremendous accomplishment for Rene Alvarado. His brother is an IBF flyweight title holder. So he now joins his brother as the 2 current title holders from Nicaragua. Ringside cheering him on, who I understand was sort of an unofficial part of his camp and a surprise to all of us, was Roman Gonzalez, who was just going crazy, shouting instructions and super involved and into it. And when Alvarado won,
rocking a scraggly beard and everything.
Yeah, you know what? When Alvarado, when the fight was waved off and Alvarado was officially the winner, I think Chocolatito was more emotional about it than Alvarado. I mean, he pretty much burst into tears. It was incredibly charming. And of all things, it turned out that Saturday was the 45th anniversary to the day of legendary Nicaraguan champion Alexis Arguello's first title win. And for Alvarado to win on the same day, an important day in Nicaraguan boxing history, I mean, it just made it all the sweeter for he and his entire team. And, you had to feel really, really good for their accomplishment. Really, though, what a rough outcome for Cancio, who'd, had a Cinderella year for him, and for it to end this way. He's got a lot of thinking to do, and he admitted, they're going to have to go back and really think through what happened. And he indicated absolutely no desire to quit. He said he's going to be back, and that's that. But, he's now going to have to crawl back the same way that Alvarado did. Alvarado has had to win 7 straight fights to get this shot. And man, he was not going to let this opportunity go by him. Good for him.
Absolutely not. Ivan, you asked in the Facebook chat, how do we see a Cancio fight versus Berchelt? No. Wrong. No. I didn't think that he would beat a Berchelt before Saturday. I darn sure don't think it now. I'll go to you, Daniel. He ran into a buzzsaw Saturday night. Were you as surprised as Gail was watching it ringside, and as I was watching it on the laptop as I was writing it, as I was reporting on it for Three Kings Boxing? Your reaction to stunning development in the eyes of many fans.
I wouldn't say he was 2 steps behind. I'd say he was 3 steps behind Alvarado. Because for every good punch that Cancio landed, it came like 3, and a good combination came from Alvarado.
I mean, he got moved. He felt every power punch. You could see in his body when he got hit with every power punch, he was moved.
Yeah.
Cancio.
And Cancio, to his credit, like I said, he didn't try to crumble do it willingly, but you definitely had to give credit to his corner. They were going to save him from himself. Like, even as demoralized as he was, you knew if you kind of threw Cancio out there for another round, he was still going to fight. Guess who Cancio is. But luckily, like I said, that corner did their job. Like, they saw their fighter who was clearly overmatched, unfortunately, in terms of power and speed and combinations, the way Cancio was against Alvarado. Even when Cancio landed himself pretty decent combinations himself. But every single time Alvarado came right back with a 4 or 5 punch combination that came out of nowhere. And it was just an emphatic, and I'm so glad that they even went to referee Braekhus and his son, like, look, we're just giving him 1 round. If it doesn't go, it's over. That's what corners are supposed to do. That's what trainers, cutmen, referees are supposed to do when they see a fight that at its point, there is no point in sending Cancio out there going to another round after that. They did the right thing. Real good job for Alvarado. And yeah, Chocolatito was wild, and his whole corner was running like, I think they were saying, Gloria a Dios, glory to God. The whole time. And it was very, very impressive. And I agree with you. Alvarado, as good as he's fought, no, I ain't putting there anywhere near Miguel Berchelt at this point.
But wouldn't you put Alvarado in front of Berchelt? That is a Salido Vargas-esque fight waiting to happen.
Oh gosh, the way he looked, he looked Saturday night, that would be World War III.
Yeah.
That would be, oh my God, Salido Var. Oh my God, like that was a blessing for like the Aztec gods, that fight.
Well, this would be the second coming of that fight, I think. Berchelt statistically throws the most punches per round of any active professional fighter. Berchelt. Santa Cruz is second. So can you imagine? I mean, Alvarado.
I put Zukan over both of them. I mean, 1,500 punches in that fight against Robles.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my, featherweight record. Oh
we
my
were
gosh.
stats thinking you got to be kidding, and we could see every one of them. It was not a wild, messy fight to count. It was pretty clear. I'm not sure I'd throw Alvarado right in against Burchelt. But I'll tell you what, before the fight, Cancio, made some grumbling noises about, getting slighted, that he should have had his opportunity against Santa Cruz. Well, now in retrospect, there's no way. But I'll tell you, I wouldn't mind seeing Alvarado against Santa Cruz. I think he would give him a heck of a good fight. Right now, unless that was a complete fluke, I'd put Alvarado against any of the title holders, and he'd have a darn good chance against any of them. Probably Burchelt would be his toughest out, but he'd make Burchelt work for it. That's for sure.
What about Machado?
Machado's moving up. So
yeah, he can't make 130 comfortably.
Division. Yeah, he's long gone.
That's number one. Number two, Cancio proved that Machado can't take body shots.
Yeah. And you have to look back at Cancio's 2 victories over Machado, which were excellent victories, and think to yourself, man, was it just a matter of the absolute right opponent for him? A styles make fights situation, and then he gets Alvarado, whose approach is so different, and he just couldn't fend him off. I do think Cancio had just the worst night of his life. The timing was horrible. He made no excuses, which I appreciate. He just went in there and he didn't have it. And that does happen. Even the best guys have a night like that, and sometimes they're lucky to escape because maybe the other guy is having one of those nights too. But in this case, it was Cancio at his worst meeting Alvarado at his best. And it was an exciting fight to watch. I mean, Cancio was fighting on heart, not skill. It's all he had. He gave it everything he could. He didn't lay down, that's for sure. He'd worked too hard to get where he was. So it made for a very entertaining fight. And in many ways, overall, much more entertaining than the big pay-per-view card was, other than Wilder's spectacular knockout.
Shout out to my UK brother, EJ Boxing Live. He's listening to us live right now over from the UK. I go to you, Jacob. Your reaction to what to that beatdown?
I mean, I didn't think I wasn't surprised by it because I've seen Rene Alvarado fight, and I'm gonna throw another name out there that I think could be a potential opponent for Rene Alvarado, Jojo Diaz. Now
that's a good fight. That's a good fight.
I went to a fight.
Yeah.
They fought before. They fought before.
Right.
They went to I went to the last fight that was at the LA Sports Arena before they tore it down, and Alvarado fought Jojo Diaz on that card, and I thought clearly Rene Alvarado, he was just way more active, and I thought he clearly beat Jojo Diaz, but Jojo Diaz was given a unanimous decision, and one of the cards was really wide. So I thought he got robbed hard in that fight. And if anybody wants to, you can find it on YouTube. Go back and watch that fight. Jojo Diaz lost that fight. And I know Cancio was talking about fighting Jojo Diaz to kind of get like revenge because he had lost to Jojo Diaz, in 2016. So there's definitely some history there. I think, and Jojo Diaz is with Golden Boy, so it's a makeable fight. But again, having seen Alvarado in person a couple times, I knew that he was a decent fighter, and Cancio has as great of a year as he had with those 2 spectacular wins. I knew that it wasn't going to just be a walk in the park. Did I predict or did I think that he was going to totally wash Cancio? No. And I have to imagine I think I heard the Cancion half of the team of there. They were saying that so he actually took a week off of work, unpaid, and focused on training and just instead of having his job and then kind of just doing the boxing part time because he wants to obviously get the big fights. And I'm wondering, in a weird way, if that affected him. And when you're a boxer and you're used to doing doing things a certain way, and it's working, sometimes when you change that routine, it could actually hurt you more than it helps you. Kind of like one of Gel's favorite fighters, Areola. When he lost a bunch of weight or when he tried to get more fit, I felt like he wasn't the same fighter that he was, when he was at his heavier weight. So, like I said, I'm not saying that I'm not making excuses, and Cancion was complete, pro in the sense that he didn't make any excuses. He gave congratulations to Alvarado. He had nothing to say but nice things. They put on a great fight. I'm glad the corner stopped it when they did. They probably could have stopped it a little bit earlier because you don't want to see, after everything that's happened this year, you don't want to see another tragedy, happen. But it was a really good fight. It was action packed. Congratulations to Rene Alvarado. History was with him with the whole Arguello thing, and then Chocolatito being there, and so it was a very emotional moment for him, and so he's done a lot, to work his way back. I think Golden Boy was about to drop him when at some point, and he basically said, "Give me one more chance," and he won the fights that he needed to fight, and then he won the biggest fight of his career. So hats off to him.
I'm going to give you guys the opportunity now. I didn't put anything new in the news. I didn't put a news portion when I set out the docket. If there's any news developments that you want to mention right now before we go to preview fights for the upcoming weekend, please do.
In case you haven't noticed, Braekhus has been stripped of the WBO title.
That cruiserweight
title. Yeah.
Yes.
He has just been stripped, and Glowacki's gonna be fighting for the vacant belt.
What was the reason that they stripped him?
I think they ordered the fight with Glowacki to order the rematch, and I think he didn't want to do it.
Correct. The rematch was ordered after that absolute train wreck of a fight with every messy problem you can imagine with the referee issues and fouls and so forth. So a rematch was ordered, and Braekhus said, "Nah, not doing it." Lost the belt.
For those who do not know, World Boxing Super Series Cruiserweight Tournament Part 2, I believe it was. Braekhus and Glowacki fought. The referee was full of what's the word, Daniel, you like to use that starts with an F?
Fuckery.
There you go. In terms of how that bout ended, Braekhus got way too much the benefit of the doubt. Punch after the bell, clearly, referee didn't call it. Glowacki was subsequently stopped, so it was ridiculous. And you're right, the BC did order a rematch, and as you guys just reported, Braekhus didn't want the rematch, and he was subsequently stripped. So there you go. Any other news? Daniel, Gail, Daniel, Jacob.
Let me see.
We know from a interview that he did on Friday night up in Ontario, from Manny Robles, did one last full day of sparring with Andy Ruiz Saturday. They were planning to go as many as 15 sparring rounds. That will be the end of his sparring preparation for the fight upcoming with Anthony Joshua in Saudi Arabia. And they were planning to leave yesterday after Manny's son fought in Indio. Manny is not in the corner anymore of his son. Rudy Hernandez now trains him, but Manny Senior was there. Very, very disappointing outcome, as you can imagine, watching his son be defeated. But I would imagine they are about to step off the plane right now at Saudi Arabia to settle in for their preparations, and hopefully they had a nice, safe flight and they're ready to get to work.
And I believe Anthony Joshua arrived in Dubai yesterday. Hadn't talked about this. Want to give a shout out to Adonis Stevenson, who was at the WBC convention, I believe, in October. And he has progressed to the point where he's walking, he's speaking. For those who do not know, who do not know, he's doing very well, shockingly well, given what happened to him in the injuries he suffered against Gavostic. So tremendous progress on the behalf of Don Stevenson, and I want to give a shout out to him. And I also want to give a shout out to Magomed Abdusamalov, who is showing signs of improvement as well, given the result of the injuries he suffered. What was that? 5-6 years ago, everyone. ESPN.
6 years ago, I think.
Yeah, in the fight against Perez, they did a story on him on ESPN. Ned Rayfield did a story on him. He said he's doing very well. Said Magomed. He says, and thinks it's 6. He says, "quote I think in 6 months from now, I'll be even better." Just going through right now. He's showing physical movement. He's listening. He's listening. He's picking up things. Says his oldest daughter, to the point that he's able to, have physical interaction with his kids. So yeah, while there's still a long battle to go, Magomed has made a significant level of progress, and want to give a shout out to him and a shout out to Adonis Stevenson. Let's get to previewing some fights here. I want to focus on 3 fights. I'll go to you, Daniel. To talk about this first fight. Oscar Valdez, former champion at featherweight WBO version. He's moving up to 130 pounds, fighting Andres Gutierrez. Thoughts on the fight?
Should be a decent showcase fight for Oscar Valdez. It has to show whether, like I said, just trying to get down to featherweight and just his fighting style was actually the key to him not looking as explosive as he did when he won the WBO title. So that'll be interesting to see how this fight shapes up, because we also have to realize who's on the undercard as well when it comes into a man who's very, very close in the weight division. So to me, it's going to be a pretty decent showcase. Oscar Valdez has to probably, this is what, his 3rd fight, I think, with the Reynosos. So this is the fight where he has to show that shift, that he's adapted to the training style. He's adjusted enough to make sure that they institute this game plan. And this should be fun to see.
Yeah, Frampton is fighting on the card. Shoot, what was it? They talking about Frampton possibly fighting Jamel Herring in 2020. So it'd be interesting to see Valdez fight. Maybe no coincidence, you may see Frampton fight Valdez sometime in 2020 as well. I like Valdez. I do want to see some improvement from him defensively. Offensively, he can do just about everything, but in the past he gets hit, and he gets hits a lot. So you're right, Daniel. This is the fight to see what true improvement he has made with Reynoso. Going to a women's fight here, Gail. Fight is happening on the zone. Um, some people still feel she's the best fighter in the world, women's fighter in the world, pound for pound. Cecilia Braekhus defending her undisputed unified welterweight titles against Victoria Bustos. Fight taking place in Monte Carlos. Your thoughts? And let me also say, this is the first fight of a multi-fight deal between Braekhus and DAZN.
Yeah, good move for her to go to the zone, and they could make some of these fights, and they have the ability to pick up and stage some of these fights in Europe, where she is a much better draw. I mean, she is a major star in Europe. This fight is taking place in Monte Carlo. Now, Monte Carlo, it's a very small little salon. You'll see the Royals there and the high rollers at the Casino de Monte Carlo Salon Medicine. And they'll have a darn good time watching Cecilia Braekhus at work. She certainly is not at the peak of her skills, but still, she's been so far head and shoulders above every other female fighter up until really the recent generation, that she should have very little trouble in this fight. Her opponent, Victoria Bustos, very good, solid Argentinian fighter. At one time was the IBF World Female Lightweight titleist. She went up to super lightweight for the first time in her last fight, and now is going up to welterweight for the first time. So that's a hell of a jump in the last year, 2 weight divisions. And I'm sure she'll put up a very good effort. She's skilled. She has zero power, even for a female fighter. Relatively speaking, you don't see these massive knockout records. She has exactly 0 knockouts, so she is no threat to Braekhus. And I think she can, Braekhus can unleash the hounds on this opponent and look very flashy doing it. I mean, she's really a tailor-made opponent. And that's no pun, although one of Bustos' few losses is to Katie Taylor. Her only fight in the U.S. Was a year ago, and Katie Taylor handled her with very little trouble. So it'll be fun to see her at work, be enjoyable to watch on an otherwise somewhat quiet fight weekend.
Last fight I want to talk about, fight is going to happen on ESPN Plus, Jacob. Birmingham, England. The return of Zolani Tete. Frustrating year for Tete, who was part of the World Boxing Super Series tournament. Had to bow out of a bout with Nonito Donaire in April due to a shoulder injury. So while he's been on the shelf, you saw what Donaire did against Stefan Young. You saw Donaire, and in a way, engage in one of the fights of the year in 2019, earlier this month. This fight for Tete, he's fighting Johnriel Casimero. Casimero, interim WBO champion. Tete is the full WBO champion. So it's kind of to settle that issue of who is the real WBO interim, the WBO bantamweight champion, excuse me. Redemption time for Tete, Jacob. This fight is to basically put him back on the map for what he hopes is certainly a better 2020.
Yeah, for sure. The spotlight of this fight is, how does Tete look after an injury? Is he gonna be a potential challenger for someone like Inoue, which was, when the World Boxing Super Series was announced for that season, everybody kind of had their money on a Tete Inoue finals, which was kind of going that way. But in 2018, he had 2 kind of not the greatest performances. He had 2 12-round decision wins, but the year prior to that, he was just ripping, through people. He had that first round knockout,
11-second first round knockout, I think it
right.
was.
Yeah, 11 seconds. And, he had a couple TKOs in the 2016, so he kind of like, burst on. And I know he became one of your kind of to watch fighters. And, so he definitely has power. He definitely has skill. But, he's got to prove that it wasn't that time hasn't passed him by, that, he's ready to take on the top of the division. And Casimero, I don't know too much about him, but the one thing that
The interesting thing, excuse me for interrupting, he's a 3 division champion. 108, 112, particularly the title at 112. He defeated one of the guys who I despise the most, one of the dirtiest fighters in recent memory. I'm not Rung Roy. After they fought the first time in which Rung Roy basically fouled his way into a win. It was ridiculous. You talk about the refereeing. You talk about bad refereeing. How that referee still has a license is still beyond me. But he got in the rematch. He promptly knocked on Rung Roy out to my enjoyment, and He moved up from 112 to 118. And when Tete was out due to injury, he got the opportunity to fight for the interim belt. And he took advantage, defeating winning the interim title in April. Yeah, the same. Yeah, in April. Yeah.
it was a Garcia Gutierrez undercard at the StubHub, which I
Yes.
wasn't. I didn't go to, but yeah, you're right. He had a Espinoza Franco down twice. But yeah, I mean, he's beaten Charlie Edwards. He knocked out Charlie Edwards, who was kind of highly touted, before his kind of controversial, last fight. But he's a Filipino guy. A lot of the Filipino guys are usually pretty tough. So instead of fighting a Donier, another Filipino legend, he's fighting Casimero. So I don't think. Hopefully, he doesn't take this guy lightly. This guy's been around. He's fought a bunch of different places, and he's a little bit of a road warrior. So, and he's got a decent record and some decent names on his resume. So, again, I think it's more of a where is Tete now at this point in his career, especially coming off an injury that took him out of a finals that we were kind of waiting to see. Although I probably would have picked Donier to beat Tete, oddly enough. But I would love to see that fight. Or I would love to see him fight Donier, but this is really going to tell us, I think, a lot of where he's at.
Indeed, and I believe not only is this his first fight in 13 months since the shoulder injury, I believe this is technically his first fight with Roger Mayweather. Excuse me, Floyd Mayweather Sr. He has been training in the Mayweather gym in Vegas, and because he's been out, you haven't officially seen him in the ring with Mayweather Sr. We get to see that this Saturday in England, and as you noted, Jacob, he looked subpar. Tete in his last 2 bouts against Narvaez, and I think I can't remember his. I can't. I'll try to. I won't try to pronounce his opponent in his last bout. I know I'll butcher the name. Allowing, that's his name. Allowing. Both of them was subpar. He didn't look his best. He didn't look sharp. He didn't look explosive. He looked strangely passive in both fights. So I want to see how he looks with a new corner, with a new team, with some new instructions, and see how he performs against Casimero. Casimero is a naturally smaller guy. I don't think Casimero has the overall talent of Tete. I wrote a story for Three Kings Boxing. It will not debut, but it should be on the site, if not tomorrow. certainly Wednesday. It's time for it's time for Tete to make his move. It's time for Tete to make his move. He says he wants Inoue in 2020, Saturday in the UK. He gets the chance to show that he's deserving of such opportunity, and so we will see how he goes. I think we want to end the show on that note. I want to thank EJ Boxing Live. I want to thank Ivan DC20 for joining us live in the chat. If you like what I want to thank also MC Royal for joining us live in the YouTube chat. If you like what you heard, please hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and please subscribe to us on both iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, and Google Podcasts. Leave a 5-star review on iTunes. Leave a review in Spotify. We'll read it. Be sure to read it here on the show. I want to go around the panel here. Always begin the show starting with ladies first. Well, we didn't this time because Gail had some technical issues, but we're going to end the show with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk small business advice, for those who want to talk media, for those who want to talk Dancing with the Stars, which I think the season finale was this evening.
Oh, no spoilers! I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, let the folks know where to find you.
Well, first of all, when can we get a damn decent boxer dancer on the show? I mean, come on. None of the boxers have been, well, except for Layla Ali, who came in second in season 3, none of the boxers, including Floyd Mayweather, Sugar Ray Leonard, and Victor Ortiz, all of whom have been on the show, didn't do so hot. So, damn, who should go on the show? Come on, Floyd. You didn't exactly perform all that well. I wonder, I'll tell you who would probably do great. If he gets knocked the F out again in Saudi Arabia, Anthony Joshua, there's always Dancing with the Stars. What can I say? Oh, you can find me on Communities Digital News, and that is COMM Digi, D-I-G-I News, comdiginews.com. My next story will be a feature about Charlie Sheehy, who is a very accomplished American amateur trying to seal his bid to be on the U.S. Olympic boxing team. The trials start right at the beginning of December, and we've got what look like some really exciting candidates to get involved in the last round of fights in the tournament and secure their place on the team, both on the men's and women's side. The men's divisions have been closed tighter. There will only be 8 men's divisions in Olympic boxing. Women's have been expanded to 5. So it's going to be very interesting. By the time we have our next show, we should have a fairly good idea of who's going to be on the Olympic squad.
And in terms of the next candidate, boxing candidate, I say Bud.
There you go. Or I'll tell you who else would kill it: Lomachenko. But
yeah,
and you know what? Alexander.
And he did study dance when he was a kid. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And how about Alexander Usyk?
Oh gosh.
Riot. If you've all seen Usyk's, social media, that guy likes to dance. And a lot of the pro dancers on that show are either ethnic Russians or Ukrainians. So he'd have a blast.
Indeed. I'll go to you, Daniel from the Inscriber, for those who want to talk the sweet science. For those who want to talk the NBA, especially as it pertains to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter at Raucus99. It's a very, very busy time of year. Obviously, we got a lot of fights coming up.
And your Heat are doing very well, undefeated at home so far.
Yep. And just because I know we're probably not going to be able to catch them, hopefully everybody has a good Thanksgiving.
Indeed, same to you and yours. Same. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Daniel. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Gail, as well as Jacob. And last but certainly not least, Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing, for those who want to talk the sweet science. For those who want to talk television and film, let the folks know where they can find you.
As always, thanks for having me on the show. Thanks to the panel. award-winning panel that we have. And I want to shout out to our friends of the show. Gus. Hope everything's going better for him. And Bo. He was on last time, so it was nice to talk to him. And then the 4 Boxing News people. But I could be found at Twitter, JRATM23. Or if there's a live fight, I'm thinking about going to that fight on December in Ontario, Charlo Harrison. So
I'll see you there.
Hopefully I get to go. We'll see. We'll see if it works out.
Can't miss that one. There is another fight just added to the fight calendar in Southern California. For those of you who are listening, by the way, Virgil Ortiz will have one more fight on December 13th. That's a Friday night at Fantasy Springs. And I would urge anyone in the Southern California area who's driving distance the opportunity to see Virgil Ortiz. At this point of his career, he is destined for big things. To get to see him up close in that venue, you just can't pass that up.
And for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk music, fitness, you know what it is on Twitter. Brother JR at Brother JR76 on Twitter. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, the blog page is the place to go to. P4PBoxReport.wordpress.com. That is the link. Top right of the page, you can find links to where to find us on social media, where to find us on all platforms that carry RSS feed, the donation links, the links to my online fitness page. December, Let's Build Together Fitness Challenge is coming. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Gail got somebody who's tells me he's ready to commit. He's ready to commit for the fitness challenge right as we get ready for holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. We all tend to, myself included, tend to put on a little weight. So if you're interested in any fun, challenging fitness challenge, they'll help get yourself right, help yourself get over the holidays. Just check me out. Check out my online fitness page on Pound for Pound Box Report blog, or just hit me up on Twitter. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Valdez and his bout against Gutierrez, Cecilia Braekhus and her fight against Bustos, the return of Zolani and Tete, and preview the fight, the rematch. It's finally here. Well, almost here, I should say. I'm going to preview the rematch between Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua. Fight is going to take place in Saudi Arabia. Povetkin is going to fight Michael Hunter. That's a good undercard bout, low key. They're going to fight on the undercard. On that same day, Emmanuel Navarrete, who's going to fight, I'll admit it right here. Basically, this is a showcase fight for Navarrete in his hometown of Mexico. Going to fight a guy by the name of Francisco Horta. On the undercard of that, German Cañas is fighting. So we would do a preview of all those fights on the weekend of these 7. So this is episode 273 of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Also, Charlo and Jermell Charlo is going to fight Dennis Hogan also on that same date of the 7th. We're going to talk about that. Chris Eubank Jr. is going to make his U.S. debut. He's going to fight Caraballo for the interim WBA title at middleweight. He's coming down from super middleweight to middleweight. So we will talk about those fights as well. So episode 273, Pound for Pound Box Report, Thanksgiving edition. For Gail, for Daniel, for Jacob, I'm your host, Michael. Thank you, everybody who joined us in the chat. Thank you for your questions and your comments. We will see you guys next time. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Gobble, gobble.
Indeed.
Good night.
And don't skip on the food. Don't skip on the food. And if you want to give us, again, if you want to shed a little bit of those Thanksgiving foods off, hit me up. Let's build together a challenge. Building our mind, body, and spirits together. Let's do it.
Sounds like I may have to do the plan now.